Oh, look at this ugly thing, guys. Look at it. It's hideous. You guys were looking at me, weren't you? That is extremely cruel of you, just so you know. Anyways, I'm Rev. Welcome back to whatever this is. And today I want to talk to you guys about Hydra and a couple of ideas that I have for it, since it's going to be coming in the upcoming weeks. And so you guys can do some preparing. It usually takes a couple weeks to build your champions, regear. You might have to swap some gear around and manage your silver and decide who to book and who to not book. So a clanmate of mine asked the question today earlier in Discord about if we had any ideas how to deal with the Hydra just yet. And honestly, I hadn't put any thought into it. And then I went into it this morning, and I went through all the heads, and I have a couple of ideas that I think are very good. And Raid seems to be in agreement with me. I'm gonna talk about that in a bit. But let's go through one of the first things that I think is gonna be most important. There's a couple key elements here. Now, the first important element that I have to highlight to you guys is cleanse. If you guys have cleanse champions that are not built, you should absolutely build them. For example, I have 3, right? And what's gonna happen is you're gonna need 3 different teams because your previous champions start getting locked out. So I am lucky that I have exactly 3 cleanse champions, so I can fit each of them into one team. I have Mausoleum Mage, I have... Ooh, where's my champions now? Oh, they're all right here, conveniently, although my camera's in the way, I know. I'm stupid. Also, I just showed you OBS. Anyways, I have Mausoleum Mage, I have Reliquary Tender, and I have Sky Touched. They all have cleanse skills, which are going to be very important for the Hydra. And the reason it's going to be very important, it's the first type of skill that I want to highlight to you guys, is because basically everything they do in terms of debuffs can be cleansed. There is nothing that cannot be removed, except of course for the, whole eating your champion thing, because it's not really a debuff. So it cannot be removed. But everything else they do to you can absolutely be removed, and this is very important because some of it cannot be blocked or resisted, like the fear, as you see right here, cannot be blocked, cannot be resisted, so the only way to get rid of it is to cleanse after you are already affected, pretty much. Especially if you don't have Veil, because if you don't have Veil and your attack this head, you might get hit with the True Fear, and so your cleanser can get in there and remove it for you. There are some things that can absolutely be blocked and resisted, but here's the thing, we don't know how much accuracy these teams are going to have. So going for a resist strat is probably very risky, and it's also very unsustainable across 3 different teams to stack that much resistance. So resistance is kind of off the table, in my opinion, at least. So having cleanse becomes even better. You're not going to be resisting even the things that can be resisted, in my opinion. And there's more I want to show you guys. That's why I'm scrolling down. There's another point that I have to make. Oh yeah. Some of it can be resisted and some of it can be blocked. But here's the thing about trying to use block debuffs. Is that what it is? Yes. My brain stopped working for a second. So here's the thing about using block debuffs. And this is why I think block debuffs is not going to be very viable, just like resistance is not going to be very viable. Because then you have the Head of Mischief, who attacks the enemy with the most buffs, and steal all buffs from the target, and also their turn meter. So all of a sudden, he's gonna take your block debuffs, yes, I don't know why I'm struggling so hard at this. He's gonna take your block debuffs, as well as all the other buffs that's on that champion, and then what's he gonna do is with his A2, he's gonna give block debuffs to every other head, as well as any other buff he might have stolen, right? So this is why I think both resistance and block debuffs are kind of out of the question. Depending on the speed and the cycles, you might be able to use it effectively, but I think it's very risky because there's 2 abilities here that absolutely screw over your block debuffs strategy. It can be stolen and it can be spread to the other heads. So I would not recommend along with the resistance, which is why cleanse is going to be so important. You can just let the debuffs come to you and you can cleanse them off. And so I think having 1 cleanser per Hydra team is going to be very important regardless of the heads you're facing. So that's one of my tips for you guys. I think every single one of your 3 teams, if at all possible, should have 1 cleanser for this specific reason. And also, depending on the affinity, you can choose differently, right? So I have Mausoleum Mage, for example, his force affinity. If it turns out like this had this blue affinity, for example, applying fear. If I put in Mausoleum Mage in there, whose force affinity, that head should not hit him, which means it's not going to have the fear placed on him. Which also means that he's going to be free to be able to cleanse everybody else. So Paying attention to the affinity is also definitely going to be very important. Sky Touch Shaman is very high value here because she's void affinity, meaning she has no weaknesses, which makes it less likely for her to be targeted by the head of the sphere, leaving her open to do this. Although she places Spear on herself, which is kind of annoying. Reliquary Tender, the same thing, she's Void, so very good. Basically, Mausoleum Mage, if you're using him, you're going to have to pay attention to the affinity. So the first thing that's going to be very important is cleansing. And the second thing that's going to be very important, which we have Hugo right here that I'm going to highlight already, is block buffs. So I believe block buffs is going to be the best debuff that you can do to the heads. That's what's in the thumbnail that I'm going to talk about. Block buffs should be absolutely insane, because I'm gonna walk you guys through this and we're gonna count. Oh yeah, by the way, another point. Head of Torment deals 25% extra damage for debuff on you, so even more important to cleanse your champions. So first one we're gonna be counting is the Head of Blight, who places a Poison Cloud on all other Hydra heads. Now, what does the Poison Cloud actually do? It's up here somewhere. I promise. Where the hell is it? Okay, here it is. Blocks damage from all poisons. Now, we don't really care about that. I don't expect anyone to be running poison on Hydra, because like most of them are immune, and the ones that aren't immune only take 10% poison damage, which is like really, really low, I would assume, unless they have a crazy amount of HP, which I doubt, honestly. So I don't think we're going to see any poison teams. Of course, a lot of this still has to be tested when the Hydra actually comes out, but nobody's like excited or talking about poison against Hydra right now. It doesn't seem to be a strategy people are like going for right now. So this portion doesn't really matter, but this portion does. Additionally, every attack dealt against the Hydra head under this buff counts as a weak hit. Now, if you have HP burn out on the heads, you're not going to suffer this condition, but it is hard for you to keep HP burn out all the time. So the fact that you can prevent the Poison Cloud from being applied on all the other Hydra heads, and you are essentially denying a turn from the Hydra by having block buffs on all the heads from someone like Hugo or Phoenix or Norog. And this is what I was going to talk about. The raid agrees with me, because today they released a 10x for buff blockers. I can't speak today. I'm so embarrassed. They released a 10% buff blockers for pulling, so I think it's gonna be the #1 debuff against Hydra for sure. I'm gonna go back to explaining it. I got a little bit sidetracked, but I wanted to highlight this to you guys. So you have champions here like Roshkard, you have Norog, you have Lady Kimi, Hugo, Phoenix. Luckily, I have 3 of them, so once again, I can fit each one of them into a separate team. And in my eyes, I think 2 slots from your 3 teams are always going to be taken ideally. 1 cleanser and 1 block buffs champion. That's the way I see it. And then you have another 3 slots to play with, or 4 actually, because it's a total of 6 champions, if I'm not mistaken. So I think every single one of your team should have a cleanser and a block buffs champion. And then you have 4 champions slots to play with. And Raid is totally in agreement. They know what's going on. That's why they released this 10x today, in case you were curious. So I'm not going to necessarily recommend for you guys to pull your shards, because 10x is low odds. We all know that. But if you want to go for it, we are the one responsible for our accounts. You're the one who's keeping track of your champions and your shard economy. So it's up to you. It's definitely going to be really important, because as we were saying, we can avoid the Poison Cloud, and there's more. If we go down here to the Head of Suffering, I believe. Check this one out. This one's insane. Places a 50% ally protection buff on all heads, except this one for 2 turns, but this one gets 30% reflect damage. That is another load of buffs that is going to be extremely vital for you to block during your Hydra fight, so you can keep dealing damage, because 50% ally protect is a lot. It is a lot, and being reflected 30% damage, you're also going to take a healthy chunk of damage back. We all know from the Doom Tower waves, when we get damage reflected onto us, it is never a positive thing. Now, it doesn't say here that these buffs cannot be stripped, so technically you could strip them. However, Poison Cloud cannot be removed or transferred, so it means it cannot be stripped. And in order to be consistent with your team, I think it's easier to just use block buffs and, avoid everything at once, instead of being like, oh, this one I remove and then this one I can block. And block buffs is kind of the debuff that's going to rule them all here, because it stops all of this from coming out. Now, of course, we still don't know their speeds, and turn cycles, that's all gonna have to be tested. Luckily, PLARIUM's actually being good to us and letting us test, which is gonna be nice. But there is one more point that I want to make here. I think it's right here. Yeah. So we also have the Head of Mischief. So get a load of this, guys. Block buffs is going to be extremely amazing against 3 heads, which is already a lot. That's like half of them, right? Because there are 6 heads. You're going to be fighting 4. And then as you decapitate, the ones that are out of the fight can also come in. So technically, you should go in prepared for every single head. So right here as well, Head of Mischief attacks the enemy with the most buffs and steal the buffs from the target and steals 50% turn meter. Keep in mind, there's no chance here. It's not 50% to steal your buffs. It's not 75%. It does. It just does. It hits you, it's going to take all your buffs, and it's going to reduce your turn meter. And again, I don't think stacking resistance is going to be a valid strategy. So once again, block buffs is going to come in huge here because although you're going to get hit and your buffs are going to be removed, the Head of Mischief is going to be unable to take those buffs for itself because it has block buffs on it. And what's so big about that is after stealing your buffs, what his head's going to do is it's going to spread the buffs it stole from you on the A2 right here where my mouse is. Hopefully you guys can see it. Takes all buffs from this head and places on every other head. And changes the duration of all spread buffs to 2 turns. So if it steals a buff from you that has only 1 turn left, it's going to go up to 2, for example. I think if it's higher, it's going to go down to 2 as well. I'm not entirely sure. But the thing is, you guys can see, there is 3 very big reasons for you to run block buffs here. And you can even do some cool shit, right? There's a couple combos you can run with it. Tylesia, I believe, is going to be very good because... Ooh, excuse me. First off, she applies Hex. Ideally, I mean, it's 50%. And you need Hex to take down... Which one of the fuckers is it? Oh yeah, here it is. It's the Head of Mischief. It was already right here, and I started scrolling like an idiot. 75% chance of redirecting an enemy attack onto another head will not occur if it's under Hex debuff. So first off, Hex debuff is a good idea for the Head of Mischief. That's something Tylesia already brings to the fight. And then what she does is she increases all debuffs by 1 turn, which means that you can basically keep the block buffs up for forever, provided you have enough speed. Again, I don't know how fast these HYDRA'S are going to be. I don't think they're going to be that fast, because if they were, people were going to get wiped very quickly if they went at a 2-for-1 rate, for example, because they have A1s that do weaken and poison. It's too much stuff for them to be stacking on you. I don't think they're going to be too fast, but maybe I'm naive, maybe I'm wrong. Well, one thing that was also noted by a clanmate of mine is none of the heads are immune to decreased speed, by the way. So if they are very fast, you could put together a fast team with like a Haikatun or an Apothecary boosting your speed up. And AoE decreased speed champion like Countess Lix, like I have here, luckily. So she does AoE decreased speed on her A2, which is also very lucky that I booked it recently. Next CVC, I'm going to keep booking her. She's a good champion. So decreased speed can also be used in case the heads are very fast. Now, there is one problem, guys. You're sitting there wondering, okay, so block buffs is broken, the HYDRA'S aren't going to do it, anything. This guy has got it all figured out, right? Well, wrong. Because here is our nemesis, guys. There had to be bad news on the way, right? It can't be all good news. Now, even though this head exists, I still think block buffs is going to be very nicely utilized as long as you time it correctly. But this head is our nemesis for the block buff strat. Basically removes all debuffs from all heads and fills the turn meter of all heads by 30%. So this head is basically going to be copying us and cleansing its teammates. And then down here also removes all debuffs on the A3 from the head with the lowest HP. Then places a life barrier on them, which honestly I don't know what it does. Okay, here it is. The Hydra has HP reinforced with a shield effect. Life barrier takes priority over shield buffs. So if it steals shield buffs from you, this is still going to take priority over it. If the life barrier is not depleted, the head under this buff retards its HP to max. That is very dangerous, of course. You're going to have to deal your damage to get through the barrier, which is something me and my clanmate was talking about, where single target champions are finally going to get to shine, right? There's so many AoE decreased damage here. I think they're going to be at least having a 40% reduction at any given point, because most of the heads have 10% AoE damage reduction, with one of them having like 30, which is insane. So single target champions that hit very hard are finally going to have their time to shine here. I was thinking about Cold Heart, actually. Skill stat scale based on any max HP cannot exceed 10%, but that's still a healthy amount, I think. If you can do 10% of a HYDRA'S health with a Heartseeker, I think that's probably worth it. So having some single target champions against the Head of Decay is a good idea, so you can burst the HYDRA'S and not let them heal up to full HP. Or since it's always going to be done to the lowest HP, so it's always going to be taking care of the Hydra head that you were focusing previously, it might even be a good idea to focus this one specifically. I think the Head of Decay is a very good head to focus, by the way, guys, especially if you're running the block buffs, debuff strategy. This head is basically going to try to screw over your plan, so I think killing this head first is a very good idea if you're going to be doing what I'm telling you, basically. Now, in terms of AoE, since most AoE damage is weak, I want to try my Royal Guards. I'm kind of insane, because I know it's AoE damage, but I'm curious to see... I don't even know where they are. Okay, they're right here. I'm curious to see if with decreased defense and weaken, I can still, like, deal 10% of their max HP with a slam like this, and if I can, it's going to be absolutely worth it, because I'm going to be taking 10% of every Hydra's HP down simultaneously with the AoE, right? So they're going to let us test. This is one of the first things I want to at least test to get out of the way and see how effective AoE damage is or is not going to be. I have very solid builds here with high crit damage, so 250% crit damage, very nice indeed. So that's going to be a good way for me to test if the AoE damage is going to be useful at all after the boss fight comes out. But the real way you can do AoE damage, which is not a hypothetical like this, is basically burn damage, right? HP burn. So if you have a champion that does AoE HP burn, which I don't have, I'm very sad about. If you have someone like Mordecai, you're going to be very happy against the Hydras. I have Ninja. That's not Ninja, that's a sexy lady. But I have Ninja who does some burns, but it's only 3 and they kind of like spread around all over the place. It might hit the same head twice, so it's not ideal. But if you have a AoE burn champion, that's basically gonna be your AoE damage, because unlike Clem boss, you're gonna have 4 heads in play at the same time. So the way HP burn works, unlike poison, is every time it does damage, so the head who has a burn on it takes a turn, that damage is gonna be applied to every single head. So the HP burn is going to be huge for the fight, and that's why they reduced the HP burn damage for the fight, right? I saw some people complaining about this and crying about it. They were like, oh, I can't believe they reduced, like they capped the HP burn. I mean, of course they did it, because, again, unlike CB, where you have only one target the HP burn is doing damage to, you're going to have 4 heads taking HP burn damage simultaneously. So if raw AoE physical damage, let's put it that way, isn't gonna do the trick, your best odds at taking down the heads like simultaneously through AoE damage is gonna be HP burn. It's gonna be very effective because they're all gonna be taking it at the same time. So honestly, guys, I think that's about it. Those are the 3 main things that are gonna be vital to Hydra in my eyes. First off, cleansing, right? So again, it's gonna make the Head of Torment deal way less damage because its damage increases with how many debuffs you have on you. And also, you can avoid some debuffs by having Perfect Veil on you and also Strengthen for one of the other heads. Let me find which one it is. This one. You'll not be plagued with Weaken if you have Strengthen on. But all of this can just be removed. So if you don't have champions, like maybe you're free to play like me. I'm totally free to play. I do have 2 Strengthen champions though, because I have 2 Burangiris that I pulled. Go figure. But instead of going for all this intricate stuff, maybe you don't have Veil champions, maybe you don't have Strengthen champions, you can just let those debuffs come to you and then you can cleanse it. So I think cleanse is going to be very important. Everything they do can be cleansed, except for, again, eating your champion part, because nobody can do anything about that. But everything can be cleansed, so it's going to be very important. Make sure you're not getting debuffs stacked onto you, so this guy doesn't deal a ton of damage to you. Second thing, it's going to be block buffs, because once again, you do not want the Head of Mischief stealing your buffs then applying it to everybody else. Block buffs is going to prevent that. It's going to prevent the Poison Cloud from coming out, if I can find it here. Oh yeah, there was something else we were theory crafting about the Head of Wrath, by the way, and removing the decreased attack may or may not be good, because I mean, I guess if you're doing single target damage, you're still going to be using your attack, so it's going to be definitely good to remove your decreased attack. I didn't touch on this head at all, but the cleanse is going to be good here as well. And something me and my clanmate were theory crafting is whether you can prevent this head from getting its vengeance buff by placing block debuffs. Placing block buffs, debuff, dear God, at the correct time. Because the way it's worded here is, once the vengeance counter reaches 15, places a vengeance buff. So if you have the block buffs debuff on this head, odds are that it's not going to work. It's not going to be able to take its buff. So that's another thing that's also going to be very important on the block buffs strategy that I forgot to mention earlier. So you want to be able to avoid this for sure. You want to be able to avoid the Poison Cloud, and you want to be able to avoid the Ally Protect and Reflect damage right here from the Head of Suffering to going on all the other heads. And you can use someone like Tylesia or any other champion that's able to increase those debuffs to make sure that they're permanently block buffs, debuff. This is so hard, guys. So they're blocked for the rest of the fight. Of course, with the exception of this motherfucker here who's gonna try to cleanse your stuff. Probably should focus the head of DK. Again, we're gonna have to try, right? The affinity is gonna throw us off as well. But I think focusing head of DK and then trying to just keep block buffs, debuff on all the heads as long as you can sounds like a plan to me. And then the third most important thing for you is gonna be the burn damage. So that way, you're not gonna be stuck with just your single target damage that you're gonna be bringing into the fight to be able to damage the heads. They are all gonna be getting chipped down turn by turn by all that burn damage, which is going to affect all 4 heads every time one takes a turn. God, I wish I had an AoE burn champion. Anyway, there are 2 more debuffs that are situational. One of them I touched on, which is the decreased speed. You can absolutely apply AoE decreased speed to the heads if you have that. And that way you can start going way faster than them and doing a bunch of damage, basically. I think a speed strat is actually going to be good for the Hydra heads. Potentially, because things like Unkillable shouldn't work pretty much. Maybe it will. Those guys like Deadwood Jedi, they're absolutely insane. Maybe they'll prove me wrong. I'm kind of a new player, to be honest. Take my advice with a grain of salt. Let me show you guys. I have barely been playing for a year at this point, so I'm no CB expert either, so maybe people will find ways to do like unkillable or pseudo unkillable teams, maybe. But I think a speed strat would be very useful here for the time being, is my assessment. So AoE decreased speed can also be good as a situational debuff. And the second situational debuff I'm going to throw out there is decrease attack, actually. I have 2 champions who do AoE decrease attack, and that might reduce the damage that the heads do to you a lot, so you can survive longer. I have Ursuga. Where the hell is she? She's the star of my CB team right now. She is totally booked, so she's going to be placing the decreased attack out there. Unless... Ooh, this is interesting. What if the Hydras have more defense than attack? Then she's going to be doing decreased def and speed instead. Interesting, I hadn't thought about that. Well, that's just one of the many mysteries we're facing, right? Until Hydra's actually released, we have no idea what its stats are. But either way, I potentially have an AoE decreased attack here. And I have another one that I pulled recently, which is Duke. Somebody I'm gonna build and book for sure, because I'm gonna need him for Faction Wars. And it's just good to have a second decreased attack backup champion. And I think it's gonna be great for the Hydras actually, because decreased defense and decreased attack on every head should be very good. So that can also help you survive a lot. And that's pretty much it. I think I covered everything. Once again, here are the champions with block buff debuffs. They are doing a 10x because they know how valuable this is for Hydra. I think a lot of players probably caught on to it already, so otherwise they wouldn't be doing the 10x, right? They want people to spend for the champions. So I don't think I'm like the special or alone. I don't think I've like, oh, I'm the only one who thought about this. So Raid are onto this concept as well. That's why these champions are here. Maybe if you want to pull for it, if you need those champions. But that's my assessment for now. I'm basically going to fit in a cleanser and a block buff debuffer on every single one of my 3 teams. And then the other 4 slots I'm going to rearrange depending on affinity. And I'm also going to do a couple tests. There's going to be more videos when the Hydra is actually out. Whew, I talked a lot. And I am testing stuff like my Royal Guard's AoE damage, Probably not gonna bother with poison unless like people try it out and poison ends up being insane. But unless you have someone like a Calvalax, maybe it's probably not gonna be worth it. I'm gonna need to regear my Phoenix, which I'm very sad about. I had just swapped him into a Savage build because I was like, you know what? I don't care about these guys' debuffs. I don't need them. So I got rid of my accuracy build and I put Savage onto him. And then I'm looking at the HYDRA'S and I'm like, shit. But good news for you guys. If you're gonna have to regear people for Hydra too, I'm gonna stop the video soon and I'm gonna shut the fuck up. Don't worry. If you guys are gonna have to do regears, they're gonna do a 50% cost reduction for swapping your gear around when Hydra comes out. So you guys should wait for that. Anyways, that is my assessment. I think these buffs and debuffs are going to be huge for Hydra. And then it's going to be very exciting when it comes out, when we actually get to test all of this. It's been great, maybe. Has it? I don't know. I think this video was shit, but either way, I'm showing OBS again for no reason. See you guys. Yeah, that's it.